My name is Dr. Elena Marsh, and I've spent the last 15 years investigating cryptids and folklore across North America. I have a PhD in anthropology, specializing in indigenous mythology and its intersection with unexplained phenomena. I've documented dozens of cases, published 3 books, and built a reputation for approaching the paranormal with scientific rigor. I'm writing this from a cabin in northern Ontario, approximately 60 miles from the nearest town. It's January 14th. The temperature outside is minus 32 Celsius. I've been tracking the Wendigo for 3 weeks, and I'm getting close. I can feel it. This will be my last entry if I'm right about what I've learned. If anyone finds this, know that I went into this with open eyes. I knew the risks. I understood what the Wendigo represents, what it does to people. But I also believed, still believe, that documentation and understanding are worth the danger. I was wrong about so many things. Let me start at the beginning. In November, I received a call from a contact at the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment in Red Lake, Ontario. Sergeant William Makwa, an Anishinaabe officer I'd worked with on a case 3 years ago. He wouldn't discuss details over the phone, just asked me to come north, said there was something I needed to see. I flew into Thunder Bay and drove 6 hours to Red Lake. The landscape changed as I went north, civilization falling away, replaced by endless forest and frozen lakes. By the time I arrived, the sky was that particular shade of deep blue you only get in the far north in winter. Will met me at the detachment looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually neat uniform was rumpled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. 3 people missing in 6 weeks, he said, spreading a map across his desk. All from the same general area. Trappers, hunters, people who know the bush. Experienced. Not the type to get lost. I studied the map. The disappearances formed a rough triangle, about 40 square miles of dense forest and frozen lakes, remote even by northern Ontario standards. Any bodies recovered? 1. Tom Wabanakwood, 56, lifetime trapper, found him 2 weeks ago, about 3 miles from his cabin. Will pulled out a file folder but didn't open it immediately. His hands rested on it, hesitant. Elena, I've seen a lot in 20 years on the job. Car accidents, domestic violence, suicides. This was different. How? He opened the folder. The photos made my breath catch. Tom's body was emaciated, skeletal. The skin was pulled tight over the bones, gray and desiccated. But according to the report, he'd only been dead a few days when they found him. His face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror, mouth open impossibly wide, as if he'd died screaming. And there were marks on his body, bite marks, human bite marks, on his arms, his legs, his torso. Some of them looked self-inflicted. The coroner says he died of exposure and malnutrition, Will said quietly. But he'd only been missing for 8 days. No way he should have wasted away like that in 8 days. And the bite marks. The coroner says some of them were made while he was still alive, by his own teeth. I examined the photos more closely. The man's fingernails were torn, bloody, like he'd been clawing at something, or at himself. What do the elders say? Will met my eyes. They say it's a Wendigo. They say it's been a bad year for greed, for people taking more than what they need from the land, overfishing from lakes, poaching, commercial operations coming in and stripping the forest. They say the spirit's active again, punishing those who've forgotten the old ways. I spent the next week in Red Lake, interviewing witnesses, collecting info, building a timeline. The pattern became clear quickly, and it was consistent with historical Wendigo accounts. The first disappearance was Daniel Cross, 43, a hunting guide who'd worked in the area for 20 years. Last seen in early October, heading out to check his trap lines. His cabin was found unlocked, food still on the table, going moldy, rifle missing. But here's what disturbed me. His journals were still there. Daniel kept meticulous records of his catches, his movements, his observations. The last entry was October 12th. It read, "Heard something calling from the North Ridge last night. Sounded like my brother. But my brother's been dead for 5 years. Going to investigate tomorrow." There were no entries after that. Second was Mary Sutherland, 31, doing wildlife surveys for the provincial government. Sharp, experienced. They grew up in the area. Disappeared in late October. Her snowmobile was found abandoned, engine still running, supplies untouched. She'd sent a radio message to her supervisor earlier that day, saying she'd seen something moving in the tree line. Something that didn't move right, like it was learning how to walk. Her supervisor said Mary had sounded scared. Mary, who'd faced down black bears and wolves without flinching, had been scared. Scared enough to call it in. The third was Tom. And Tom they'd found. I interviewed his brother, Peter Wabanakwat. He was in his 60s, a traditional hunter and trapper, someone who still followed the old ways. He was reluctant to talk at first, but Will vouched for me. Explained I respected the old knowledge. Wasn't just another outsider looking for a story to exploit. We sat in his kitchen, drinking strong black tea, while snow fell outside the window. Tommy changed in the weeks before he died, Peter told me, his voice heavy with grief. Started talking about hearing voices in the forest. Said something was calling him. He got thin. Stopped eating right. Stopped sleeping. I thought maybe he was sick. Depression, maybe. Told him to see a doctor. He wouldn't go. Said doctors couldn't help with what he had. Did he say what the voices were saying? Peter was quiet for a long time, staring into his tea. Said they were teaching him things. About hunger. About what it means to really want something. He started talking about the old stories. About the Wendigo. Said he finally understood what it meant. Said we were all wrong about it. Wrong how? The stories say the Wendigo is a spirit that possesses people who resort to cannibalism, right? That it's a punishment for eating human flesh during times of starvation. But Tommy said it was backwards. Said the Wendigo doesn't make you hungry. The hunger makes the Wendigo. Peter looked up at me. Said the hunger comes first. The wanting. The greed. That's what opens the door. The spirit just fills the space that greed creates. Did he say anything else? Last time I saw him, maybe 2 days ago before he went missing, he grabbed my arm, looked me right in the eyes, said it's not about eating people. It's about wanting to consume everything, wanting more, always more, until there's nothing left of who you were. Then he walked out. That was it. I recorded everything, took notes, cross-referenced with historical accounts of Wendigo encounters I'd studied over the years. The pattern was consistent with traditional descriptions. A spirit that possessed the greedy, the selfish, those who took more than their share. It manifested as endless hunger, physical transformation, madness. The possessed became gaunt, skeletal. Their hearts turned to ice. They developed an insatiable craving for human flesh. But here's what the folklore always emphasized, what Peter had hinted at. The Wendigo wasn't just a monster. It was a cautionary tale, a representation of what happens when we let greed consume us. And importantly, you couldn't just hunt and kill a Wendigo. You had to understand what fed it, what gave it power. I began my field investigation in early December. I set up a base camp in an abandoned ranger station, about 15 miles from where Tom's body was found. The building was solid, built in the 1960s, with good bones. It had a working wood stove, shutters that closed, enough space for my equipment. I brought cold weather gear rated for extreme conditions, 3 weeks of supplies, recording equipment, cameras, thermal imaging, motion sensors, the works. Everything I needed to document a cryptid encounter. The first was routine. I hiked the areas where the disappearances had occurred, documenting tracks, taking soil samples, collecting what evidence I could find. I set up trail cameras in a grid pattern, covering the most likely movement corridors. I interviewed the few trappers still working in the area via radio. The forest area was beautiful in its harshness. Endless spruce and jack pine, their branches heavy with snow. Frozen lakes like sheets of glass, so clear you could see down into the dark water below. Snow so deep you needed snowshoes to move. The landscape transformed into something alien and pristine. And it was quiet. Dead quiet. I've spent time in remote forests before. Alaska, the Yukon, northern Quebec. There's always sound. Wind in the trees, animals moving through the underbrush, ice cracking on the lakes, ravens calling. The forest is never truly silent, but here, there were stretches of absolute silence. Hours where nothing moved, nothing made a sound. Like the forest was holding its breath. Like it was waiting for something. On day 8, I found the first sign. Tracks in the snow, about 2 miles from my camp. They looked human at first glance. Barefoot prints, which was impossible in the cold. Exposed flesh would freeze in minutes. But the size was wrong. Too long, too narrow. Each print was maybe 14 inches long and only 4 inches wide. And the stride was enormous. Easily 7 or 8 feet between prints. Whatever made them was moving fast, taking huge loping strides. I photographed them from multiple angles, took measurements, made plaster casts. The toes were elongated, almost claw-like. There were drag marks between some of the prints, like the thing was occasionally dropping to all fours. I followed them for about a mile before they disappeared into a rocky area where the snow was too thin to hold prints. But I found something else there. Scratches on the trees, deep gouges in the bark, about 7 feet up, arranged in sets of 5, like fingers or claws. That night, I heard it for the first time. I was in the ranger station, reviewing my notes by lamplight around 2 a.m. The generator was off to conserve fuel, so the only sounds were the cracking of the fire in the wood stove and the occasional groan of the building settling in the cold. Then, I heard something outside. Not close, maybe 100 yards out in the tree line. A sound, like distant crying or laughing. It was hard to tell. High-pitched, almost musical, but wrong, discordant, like someone trying to imitate human emotion, but getting it slightly off. I grabbed my thermal camera and went to the window, careful not to show myself. Scanned the tree line slowly. There, a heat signature, human-shaped, but elongated, impossibly thin. Maybe 7 feet tall, but couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds based on thermal profile. It was standing at the edge of the clearing, completely motionless. I watched it for 5 minutes, my breath fogging the window. It didn't move. It didn't seem to breathe, though I could see the heat signature clearly. Just standing there, facing the station. Then, it was gone. Not walking away, just gone. The heat signature vanished like someone had flipped a switch. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window with my rifle across my lap, watching the tree line until dawn. The next day, I found my trail cameras had been moved. Not destroyed, not stolen. Moved. They'd been carefully taken from their positions and placed in a neat line, all facing back toward my camp. All of them had captured the same thing the night before. A figure, tall, skeletal, thin, standing in the forest. In each successive photo, it was closer, starting maybe 200 yards out in the first camera, then 100 in the second, then 50 in the third. In the last photo from the camera closest to my camp, it was right at the edge of my clearing. The face was the worst part. It looked human, but stretched, elongated, like taffy. The eyes were too large, too dark, completely black with no visible whites, and the mouth was open with a smile that showed too many teeth, all of them sharp, all of them stained dark. I should have left then. I should have packed up my equipment and headed back to Red Lake. But I was getting close. I could feel it. This was real. This was documentation. This was proof that the Wendigo existed, that the folklore had a basis in observable reality. This was everything I'd spent 15 years searching for. That desire, that hunger for proof, for knowledge, for validation. That was my first mistake. I spent the next few days preparing, researched every historical account I could access via satellite internet, talked to elders via phone, asking about protection methods, traditional ways of dealing with the Wendigo. I called Peter, asked him what his grandfather had told him. The advice was consistent across sources. Don't engage. Don't try to fight it. The Wendigo feeds on confrontation, on fear, on desire. The more you want to defeat it, to capture it, to understand it, the stronger it gets. But they also said something else, something that stuck with me. The Wendigo can be starved. If you deny it what it needs, your fear, your greed, your hunger, it weakens. It can be forced to move on, to find easier prey. The traditional way to protect yourself was to practice radical non-attachment, to want nothing, to fear nothing, to be empty. I tried that approach. For 3 days, I meditated, practiced mindfulness techniques I'd learned years ago, tried to empty myself of want, of need, of fear. I ate sparingly, just enough to maintain function. I reduced my desire to the absolute minimum needed for survival. It didn't work. The encounters escalated. Every night, the thing came closer. I'd see it was at the window, peering in, that stretched face pressed against the glass. The eyes would track me as I moved around the station. I'd hear it on the roof, scraping at the shingles with those long fingers. The sound was rhythmic, almost hypnotic. It would call to me in voices I knew. My mother's voice, asking me to let her in from the cold. My ex-husband's voice, saying he was sorry, saying he wanted to talk. My colleague's voice, Diane, who died in a car accident 2 years ago, calling my name, saying she'd found something I needed to see. I started losing weight, not from a lack of eating. I forced myself to maintain my caloric intake, logging every meal, but the weight fell off anyway. I'd step on my portable scale and see the numbers dropping. 2 pounds a day, 3, 4. I'd look in the mirror and see my face getting thinner, my cheekbones more prominent, my eyes getting larger in my shrinking face. My skin was taking on a grayish tint, like old paper. And I was hungry, all the time, no matter how much I ate. That's when I realized the Wendigo doesn't hunt you. It transforms you. And the investigation itself, the desire to understand it, to document it, to possess that knowledge and make it mine, that was the greed it fed on. That was the door I had opened. I was becoming what I was hunting. On day 19, I found Daniel Cross, or what was left of him, about 5 miles from my camp, in a small cave, partially hidden by a snowdrift. I had been following fresh tracks, the same elongated barefoot prints I'd found before. They led me right to him. He was alive, barely, skeletal, maybe 80 pounds on a frame that should have carried 180. His skin was gray and papery, stretched tight over bones that looked too large. His eyes were sunken, but huge, pupils dilated so wide they looked completely black. He was gnawing on a frozen rabbit carcass, tearing at it with his teeth that looked too sharp, too many. When he saw me, he started laughing. The sound was exactly what I had been hearing at night. High, discordant, wrong.
"You can feel it, can't you?"
he said. His voice was raw, damaged from screaming, or the cold, or both.
"The hunger, it never stops. Never. You eat, and you eat, and you eat, and you're still empty. Still wanting. Still needing more."
Daniel, I'm going to get you help. I have a radio. I can call.
No help. No cure. Once it gets inside you, once you let the hunger in, you're already gone.
He dropped the rabbit, and I saw his fingers were too long now, the joints bending in too many places.
I thought I could beat it. Thought I could just outlast it. Thought if I fed the hunger with animals, with small things, I could avoid what it wanted. But it's patient. It waits. And eventually, you give in. Eventually, you become it.
The voices you heard, I said, trying to keep him talking, trying to understand. What did they say?
They taught me.
His smile was terrible.
Taught me about want, about need, about how we're all just hunger, pretending to be people. All of us, walking around, wanting things, wanting love, wanting recognition, wanting to matter, wanting to understand. That's all we are. And the Wendigo just shows the truth.
Where's Mary? Mary Sutherland. Is she out here? Daniel's laugh turned into a wet cough. Blood flecked his lips.
Mary fed it. She understood faster than I did. Gave herself over. She's out there now. Hunting. Becoming. Maybe she's the one you've been seeing at night. Or maybe that's Tom. Or maybe it's all of us. All the people who came before. All the people who wanted too much and became this.
And just then, he lunged at me, faster than his wasted body should have been able to move. Those two long fingers reached for me, and I could see the nails were black and sharp. I barely got out of the cave before he was on me. I ran. I didn't look back, hearing him chase me, hearing his breath rasping, hearing that terrible laughter echoing through the trees. I made it back to the station, barricaded the door. Daniel didn't follow all the way, but I could hear him out in the forest, calling, laughing, saying my name over and over. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've been documenting everything, recording my observations, my physical changes, my mental state, because I understand now what the Wendigo is, what it does, how it works. It's not just a spirit, not just a monster. It's a process, a transformation that begins the moment you desire something too much. And investigating it, trying to understand it, trying to capture and document it, that desire is enough. That hunger for knowledge, for proof, for understanding. It's the same greed that drives a starving person to cannibalism, just a different flavor of wanting. The hunger's inside me now. I can feel it growing. I'm eating everything I have left. 3 full meals a day, snacks between, forcing food down even when I'm not hungry. And it's still not enough. Nothing's enough. I look at my own hands, and I wonder what they taste like. I think about the people in Red Lake, about all the warm meat walking around, talking, living, and I have to force those thoughts away. These thoughts aren't mine, but they are. That's the horror of it. The Wendigo doesn't possess you like a demon. It doesn't replace your mind with something foreign. It draws out what was already there. The greed, the selfishness, the hunger that exists in everyone. It just magnifies it, focuses it, until there's nothing else left. I'm writing this while I still can, while I still have enough of myself left to document the final stages. My skin is gray now, like old newspaper. My fingers are too long, the joints popping and cracking as they elongate. I've lost 43 pounds in 3 weeks. My teeth feel sharp when I run my tongue over them. And I'm so hungry. So hungry. I called Will this morning on the satellite phone. Told him not to come looking for me. Told him to mark this area as off limits. Tell people to stay away. He argued. Said he was sending a team. I hung up on him. I should have smashed the phone. Should have made sure he couldn't trace the signal. But part of me, the part that's transforming, the part that's hungry, part of me wants him to come. Wants them all to come. There are things moving in the forest now. I could see them from the window. Tall, thin figures, watching, waiting. I think one of them might be Mary. Another might be Daniel. The others, I don't know. How many people has the Wendigo taken over the years? How many are out there, transformed, hunting, waiting for new victims to join them? The sun is setting now. It's beautiful, the way the light hits the snow, turning everything gold and pink. I should appreciate that. I should focus on beauty, on things that aren't hunger, aren't need, aren't want. But all I can think about is that Will might not listen. He might come looking for me anyway. Might bring a team. All that warm flesh, all that meat, walking right into the forest. And I'm so hungry. I can feel myself changing, not just physically, mentally. The part of me that's still Elena is getting smaller, quieter. The hunger's louder. It has its own voice now, its own thoughts. It's teaching me things, just like it taught Daniel, just like it taught Tom, about what it means to really want, to really need, to let one desire consume everything else until you're nothing but hunger wearing a human shape. The Wendigo isn't a spirit that possesses people. It's what we become when we let desire consume everything else, when we let hunger define us, when we want something so much that we're willing to sacrifice everything. Our humanity, our morality, ourselves to get it. I understand now why the elders say you can't kill it. Because it's not separate from us. It is us. The worst parts of us, given form and power. I'm leaving the station now. I can't stay inside anymore. The walls feel like they're closing in. The hunger's too strong. I need to move, need to hunt, need to feed. I'm leaving this journal, these notes, all my recordings. Maybe someone will find them. Maybe they'll understand what happened. Maybe they'll be smarter than me and turn back before it's too late. But probably not. Because the thing about hunger is that everyone has it. Everyone wants something, wants to know, wants to understand, wants to possess knowledge or power or recognition. The want is enough. That's all the Wendigo needs. It's full dark now. I can see them clearly. The other Wendigos, standing at the edge of the tree line, waiting for me, welcoming me. I can hear them calling. Their voices blend together into something that's almost music. I'm not afraid anymore. The fear has been replaced by hunger, by anticipation, by the certainty that soon, very soon, I'll feed. And I'm getting close. Close to understanding. Close to becoming. Close to feeding. Dr. Elena Marsh died 3 weeks ago in a ranger station in northern Ontario. I'm what's left.
And I need to feed.
This journal was found by Royal Canadian Mounted Police search and rescue teams on February 3rd. Dr. Marsh's body was not recovered. The area has been marked for ongoing investigation. Local Indigenous leaders have requested the site be considered sacred ground and restricted to the public. This request has been honored. Sergeant William Makwa retired in March and has returned to his community. When asked about the case, he declined to comment, stating only, some hungers can't be satisfied, some knowledge isn't worth having. The old stories exist for a reason. 4 hikers have gone missing in the same area since March. Searchers report hearing voices in the forest, calling to them, saying their names. The voices sound familiar, they say, like people they know, like people they've lost. Local authorities have closed down the region indefinitely. Warning signs have been posted at all access points. They are routinely torn down or defaced. No further investigations are planned.